this computer. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Today, I have a very special guest. Her name is Jacqueline Perez. She is currently a manager at a doctor's office, and today we're just going to be asking her a few questions. Hi, Jacqueline.
Hello, how are you girls doing?
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining us. So I want to start off with, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, yes, my name is Jacqueline. I am currently actually a student at MSU. I'm in my junior year of public health administration. I also manage a doctor's office that was established in 2003 by the doctor who's also my father. He graduated in 1995 from Cuba, and then he did his boards and his residency in Jamaica Hospital. And he's had now about 20, if I do the math correctly, 18 to 20 years of practice here in the US.
That's amazing. So
yes.
what exactly is it that you do in the doctor's office?
So as a manager, we're also a solo practice, so we only have one doctor right now. Based on all the bureaucracy, it's really hard dealing with the insurances and stuff, so that's kind of what we do. Well, I do. I try to keep everything on task with credentials. I also do the billing in the office. I handle payroll and reps, meetings, all that type of stuff.
Do you interact with a lot of customers? I mean, not customers, I'm sorry. Do you interact with a lot of patients on a daily basis?
I do. We are established in Hudson County, so it's very traditional physician practice, old Cubans that like to talk and know your life. And they also saw me growing up there because we used to live upstairs from the practice. So I know a lot of them for many years. They like the homey feeling, so I do know a lot of them, and I interact with them.
That's amazing.
So you mentioned that your father is a doctor that came from another country. Do you think people make assumptions about his care based off of his accent, the way he looks? Do you think anyone ever does that, and how would you respond to that?
I think medicine in the US right now is very ungrateful at times, and I do think that when they see a doctor speaking an accent, not only because he's Cuban, but like Indians or from Nigeria, when they have a very thick accent, patients are a little bit unease at first, and they kind of do challenge the doctor's care. So I also think it's not a racial thing. I think it's more of a bias because they feel more comfortable with what they know. So the practice that you practice in Hudson County is a lot different than the one you practice in Teaneck, because in Hudson County, if you speak Spanish, they feel like home. But in Teaneck, they feel like, oh, why is this guy a doctor and he doesn't speak perfect English? So I do think that there is some of an assumption that comes from that.
So based off of that assumption that you spoke about, have there been instances where you've seen this affect the way that a patient is treated? Has that ever happened in your practice, or have you heard about that happening in other practices, and how would you respond to that?
I think the way, like I said in the first question, I think there's a lot of bureaucracy and business in medicine now, which has affected care in general of all types of patients. I think where I've seen it the most has been with self-pay patients that don't have insurance. The US, if you go to a hospital here, they are, by law, they have to treat you. So yes, they treat you, but then there's a joke in the medical field that's yes, they treat you, but then the bills kill you kind of thing. So I think it's not that they don't take care of you. It's more of the fact that people don't have access to it because it's very expensive for those patients that don't have insurance, I think. And the undocumented have it very hard too because they're very fearful of filling out paperwork or what can happen to them. So that's what I think in that aspect.
Perfect. And the next question will be, have you or someone you know ever received the wrong care because of race that was not taken into consideration?
I think when there's a language barrier, it can be a very hard task for a lot of patients. Mm-hmm. I haven't personally experienced it, but I have had patients who, when they come to the office, they come with a very negative opinion of medicine in the US because they weren't able to communicate what they were feeling. So they lack care, treatments. There've been gray areas that are very important. For example, a patient that comes from a Black ethnicity who needs to get glaucoma screening but didn't say that, or like said, oh, I never got it, I did get it, because they didn't understand what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
So they would lack getting the treatment, and then it's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And how will you react the bias? Will you advocate for a better care, or will you be numb to the experience?
I wouldn't like to say that I would be numb to the experience. I like to advocate to find a provider or doctor or care that you feel comfortable with. The one that may be helpful to me might not be the easiest one for you. Every doctor has millions of problems. They have different way of approaching. There's doctors that like medicine. There's doctors that like therapy. There's doctors that believe in natural medicine, you know? So I think that you have to kind of find the one that you feel comfortable with and that you can communicate easily with in order to be in better care.
I love the fact that, like, you mentioned that, like, you have to find a doctor that you feel comfortable with, because the next question that we're going to ask you is, like, are there any steps that you can take? Like, are there any steps that you recommend for patients to take to advocate for their own healthcare?
I say they kind of have to base it on their own experiences. I have a lot of patients who base going to a doctor or not going to a doctor on reviews, on ratings, on insurance coverage. And sometimes that's not the best, because normally a person who would put a review, especially on a doctor, is someone who's not happy. People like their way or their highway, and it's sometimes very hard to please everyone, especially in the healthcare, because as much as WebMD and Google likes to answer some things for us, they're not doctors. And sometimes when we go with a problem, we don't get a medicine, we're like, oh my God, this doctor doesn't know what he's doing. And it's not because he doesn't know, it's because the way he practices his career is a lot different, you know? So I think for better care, a patient should evaluate by himself what he needs, maybe the language, the way the doctor like proceeds, if he's a traditional, if he uses nurse practitioners, kind of those things. That would be my best opinion on that.
You mentioned something earlier, wasn't here like on the Zoom call, but I did have a conversation with you earlier on talking about insurances, because you said like the expenses if a person doesn't have insurance, you know, that joke that you mentioned in the hospital. Would you be able to explain when we talked about like the tiers for your insurance and like knowing what tier you have when you're going to the doctor so that you don't get like crushed by all of those bills?
So the way the insurances work, there's a lot of different perspectives to put it. But summarizing it down. So if you have Medicare, a lot of patients think that they hit 65, they have Medicare, everything's covered. And that's not true. A Medicare patient has a $180 deductible before his insurance starts covering. And then they have a 20% co-insurance. So it means whatever they get done, office visits, labs, radiology, hospital, whatever, it covers 80% and you have to pay 20% of that. Medicaid is the one that covers everything, but there's a lot of times that the physician has to do a prior authorization to make sure that they want to pay for that. So they do that with the purpose of not having the patient abuse of this government funded insurance. And some patients do. Like, it's gotten harder through the years. I've been working in the field for 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I want to say about 5 years now. And I've seen it get worse now. Like before, something you would do, you get authorized right away. And now it's like a whole headache. About the tiers, those are the commercial insurances, which is the ones either your job or you pay. And a lot of insurances kind of kick physicians out of tier 1 or tier 2. So tier 1 is like VIP. You pay less. They want you to go there because the physician has a lot of patients and they like how he works. A tier 2 is considered out of network before. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but out of network is I'll cover you because you have insurance, but you're going to have to pay higher rates. And a lot of patients aren't aware of that. The same way a lot of patients don't know what deductibles are or co-insurance. They think that because they have an insurance, everything's covered. And they don't like to pay for healthcare. Like someone prefers to pay $2,000 for a bag than pay $2,000 for a colonoscopy. You know, it's stuff like that.
Thank you so much. You brought up like such amazing like perspectives and ideas. And
Insurance 101, guys.
Insurance 101. Check your insurance. If you want to advocate for your own healthcare, check your insurance. Make sure you're in network so you don't end up paying a lot of money. Oh, we finally get to see your face. How exciting.
Excited.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming out and meeting with us.
Oh my God, anytime, guys. It was very fun.
Bye.
Bye.
Jackie, thank you.